All right.
I think I've offended enough people on today's show, Gord. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, let's offend people in the next episode.
Welcome to Bitcoin Basics with your hosts, Faris and Gordon. Visit bitcoinbasics.help if you need help buying and securing your Bitcoin.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bitcoin Basics podcast. I am your host, Faris, here with Gordon once again. And just to keep up with the times, my pronouns are the, it, and man-child. Now, the price of Bitcoin is $38,690. The block height is 734,636. Gordon, how are you doing, and what are your pronouns?
I won't mention that because I don't want to alienate our massive alphabet audience, but probably by saying that, I did actually alienate them. So maybe we just edit that out. No, let's leave it. I'm good. Thanks, buddy. What are we talking about today?
So today we are talking about Web 3.0. That's something that is making the rounds on the crypto Twitter sphere. And obviously part of the reason is Elon Musk, who's a crypto enthusiast, if we want to call him that, though some of his choices in crypto are questionable, bought Twitter. And so a lot of the Bitcoin people are very happy about that. Now, Gordon, you mentioned just before you went to air that it's worth mentioning Web 1.0 and 2.0, which, to be honest, I think I've heard that in the past, but I can't remember what they were. So before we talk about what is Web 3.0, tell us the history of the internet in 93 seconds.
I reckon I could do it in 90 seconds. So feel free to butt in, Faris. I'll try and keep this short, but I do think it's interesting. So before we had the World Wide Web, and I know a lot of people use internet and World Wide Web the same thing. They're not. So a really brief history is the internet, which actually started out as DARPA net. Yes, that DARPA in America. In the 1970s, the US were actually afraid that Russians were going to lob some nuclear missiles. So they wanted to decentralize information. And so they created something called ARPANET, which morphed into the internet. It was basically used at universities and a few defense contractors in the 1970s. And all the way up and say the early 1990s, you didn't have this World Wide Web. You had this thing called the internet. And for those, yes, I'm old. Faris, you're old as well. We remember, okay, I'll speak for myself, dialing up. So I'm going to edit the dialing in sound that you connected your modem, which was kind of like this computer phone, which converted analog to digital and digital and analog and whatever. And I actually hassled my dad so much because whenever you wanted to use your computer with this modem, someone else couldn't be on the phone. So my mom was constantly on the phone. I'm like, Mom, get off the phone. I need to, download porn from, whatever, the internet or whatnot. So I hassled my parents. Don't worry, they don't listen to this. I hassled my parents so much that we actually got a separate phone line. But anyway, that was dial-up and internet and that kind of stuff. That was before the World Wide Web. And, you could check your email. I remember at university, actually, you went into university, and if you wanted to check your email, you did it sort of by command line, typing in these commands. There was no mouse and, nice Gmail sort of interface. So that's the internet. The internet is basically the hardware, the massive undersea cables, but it's also, your router that you've got in your back room providing Wi-Fi and everything in between. That is the internet, and that is decentralized. So that is, internet literally means a network of networks. So think of the internet as hardware. The Skype app on your phone or the Telegram app or Skype, whatever.
Sorry, Gordon. Let me jump in for a second there. So just to recap, the birth of the internet, so Web 1.0, that was essentially just a file sharing, communications sharing service.
No, I haven't even got to the web yet.
No. So DARPA is what I'm referring to here. So DARPA is where it began, and that was just a file sharing service. I haven't got
to the World Wide Web yet.
But I thought this was wasn't DARPA where we began?
No. So I'm talking about the internet, and I've got to the point mid-1990s where we're about to introduce the World Wide Web.
Yes. So that's where I'm with you. So DARPA actually began as a file sharing service for the Pentagon. That's where it began.
Yeah. let's just say the internet, not really file sharing, but yeah.
Okay. So it just began as a communication method for an internal communication method. And that's where they laid down a cable so they can share information between departments on different parts of the country. So it was centralized within the United States. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it was kind of a little bit decentralized, but mostly amongst universities and defense contractors initially.
Right. Because, okay. And at that stage, like, was it part of NATO? Did they start communicating with other countries in NATO where they say, okay, we want to communicate with you guys using this, and I'm using inverted quotes, internet?
Historians would probably know better than I would, but yeah, I mean, that's where it started in U.S. universities, 5 or 6 of them, a couple of defense contractors, and then
Caltech's one of the big ones, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah, then it spread.
So we started there where it was basically just underground cables communicating within America. That's where it originated.
ARPANET, yes.
ARPANET. Okay. Now we move in. So was that Web 1.0 is what you're referring to, or not even there yet?
No, we haven't got to the web yet.
Okay, cool. All right. Sorry. Proceed.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, and share so we can find others like yourself.
No, please interrupt because I'll continue to talk on. And actually, I used to teach computer science, and it sounds like a really simple question, but the grade 12 question for computer science students is, what is the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web? Yeah. And they have to actually go into great detail about that. Okay. So, so basically we're up to the mid 1990s. There's email. There's this dial-up thing, and I'll edit the sound in, which I absolutely love nostalgically. But there wasn't sort of the ability to, hey, I want to check out a small business sort of online and check out the details, whatever. We're still looking at phone books and yellow pages and white pages, all that kind of stuff. So up until that point, we had the internet, and the internet was basically dialing in to some server wherever, maybe a local company in your city, your university, or CompuServe was one of the biggest sort of most popular internet servers. Were AOL. I don't know if people remember getting a CD, and people are like, what the hell are you talking about, CDs? In the mail to install AOL's malware and ransomware on your computer to get you started. That's internet.
Gordon, how did we go from this was something used by the American government to now everyone can access it? How did that transition take place? Okay,
so 1970s, ARPANET morphed into the internet. By about the 1990s, everyone was using it, not just academia, but personal people on their PCs at home and dial-up and all that kind of stuff.
So, sorry, the U.S. government just released it for free, or how did that work?
I'm not too sure of the history of that, but I think once people outside of academia sort of saw this as a cool thing that they wanted to get involved with, then that sort of became known as the internet.
Okay.
So now they released it, but
so Internet 1.0, was that when everyone got their modem and the dial-up modems? That's the beginning of Internet 1.0?
Just internet. We don't have any versions or anything. Just internet.
Just the internet then started. Yeah. Okay.
And so now we're at a point of around about the mid 1990s where most houses, well, not most houses, but many houses have the internet, especially in the Western world. You can't do a lot with it though. You can dial up to stuff. You can send messages. There was email. There was game servers. I remember text games where you type in, walk north, open door, and all that kind of stuff. But we didn't have this notion of web browsers. So there was no Firefox or Chrome or Safari or whatever. That changed in around about the mid 1990s. What we know of now is sort of Web 1.0, Web version 1. A guy called Tim Berners-Lee created this thing called Hypertext Markup Language, HTML. And that was a way to have this specific program that we now know as a web browser to create this language whereby it's not just a document of text. There are actually links in this document which would link to another document. And a lot of people say, yeah, so what? But back in the day, in the 1990s, we didn't have that. And there was sort of no way to sort of have a website. There was no way to catalog all this information. He actually did it working for CERN because they had so much data and information that they needed a way to catalog and to be able to view this information. And that is basically the birth of Web 1.0. These static, not moving, not interesting, essentially text on a page with links, maybe a couple of images, was on. I mean, one of my first assignments, Faris, was to create a basic web page. That was Web 1.0.
Okay, cool. So at this stage, we've gone to, it's more interactive. It's not static. And so, it's not just a static web page. You can do things within the web page.
Yeah, so Web 1.0 was a static web page that didn't move. There was no interaction. It was basically a web page or a series of web pages hosted in a central location, whether that was a university, at a company, or whatnot. Even at this stage, many small businesses didn't have their own website. There was really no need to. And the keyword here is centralized. So it was centralized somewhere. And there was basically no interaction. Someone put some information on a page, people viewed it. That's Web 1.0.
So what was the next step? How did we evolve from there?
So there's no sort of agreement on where and what time Web 2.0 came about. It was probably the mid, sort of after the Y2K stuff, around about that time, around about 2000s. So instead of having a static page that, someone created and it might look nice with pictures or whatever, there's no interaction. That's Web 2.0. And that's where we are today. So it's still centralized. So you have websites, our website, for example, bitcoinbasics.help, it's centralized. It's in a central location. It's, on our server. We produce the content. Sure, there's a little bit of interaction. You can fill out a form and whatnot. But essentially, actually, Faris, our website is Web 1.0, to be honest. It's sort of one-way communication. Web 2.0 is more things like Facebook, social media. That's where it's not just the creator of the content. You can actually get feedback. And the keyword here is user-generated content. So YouTube is having people generate videos. They're uploading those videos. And so all of YouTube's content doesn't come from Google. YouTube's content comes from its users itself. So that's the key difference with Web 2.0.
So around this time, this is, just after the new millennium kicked in. I remember reading President Bill Clinton at the time allowed consumer access to the GPS system, because the GPS system that we use today for Uber, Maps, all this kind of stuff on our phones, that used to be controlled and encrypted by the defense departments. And basically, Bill Clinton said, open it up. And he allowed consumer access to the GPS system. Was that in any way relevant to the development of Web 2.0? I mean, I know it came on later when we had these, location-enabled apps, but at the time, was that in any way relevant to the internet?
I guess it is, but the key thing with, and what you're talking about is not necessarily web, opening access to something. Facebook has open access to some data that, for example, advertisers can essentially mine your personal data. So open access to something isn't really the same thing. The keyword here again, and Web 2.0 is what we have now. I think the keyword really is centralization. So even though YouTube, for example, has user-generated content, so there's more participation from users, it's still centralized. So yes, we have cool things like videos and all kinds of interaction and whatever, but at the end of the day, the content is still controlled by the content creator.
All right, so I'll just jump in, Gord. Just give you a break from talking so much because your throat's giving away. So in summary, what started out as just an internal communication method for the Department of Defense had servers housed in universities. That grew into something that the users could jump on, but you just access a web page. You just basically absorb information. You don't actually interact with the internet or a web page. That was Web 1.0. Web 2.0, at the turn of year 2000, that era, was you could actually start interacting with the internet in that you could now upload your own content. Is that a fair summary of where we are?
Web 2.0, yeah, user-generated content, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Web 2.2 or 2.0? Is there a difference there?
People like to say Web 2.0, Web 1. It's like Web 1, Web 2, whatever. Same thing.
Cool. And by the way, guys, if you're looking for any contemporary shows that'll help you with this stuff, are quite entertaining. Big Bang Theory, they talk about this stuff all the time. Like every now and again, they'll go play old video games, and you'll see them play Dungeons and Dragons, where, as Gordon just said, you press walk forward, and enter. Another show that came out, which was really helped you understand the early days of the internet, is the what's it called? I think it's called Pam and Tommy, but it was about the Pamela Anderson, Tommy Lee sex tape, and how that was one of the first things to be sold on the internet. I forget the name of the show. It's on Disney. But yeah, it's really interesting to see one of the guys just go through trying to sell this thing on the internet and how that evolved. So, sorry, Gord. So after Web 2.0, what happened?
I don't know how to follow up from that. Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
After Web 2.0, what happened?
What happened, Faris? I don't know what happens. We're in currently Web 2.0. So that's where we are today.
So when the smartphone was introduced, that just used existing infrastructure, but wasn't the infrastructure underground? Wasn't it cables underground? How did we go from a computer that was plugged into a modem to a device that is always connected? Because like you say, I remember when you wanted to go online, you'd make an announcement to the house, I'm going online, to make sure no one's expecting a phone call or about to make a phone call. So how do we go from going online to being online cordlessly?
Yeah, that is what we call ubiquitous internet. So that had nothing to do with World Wide Web. Just think of the internet as like the infrastructure, the hardware, the software that connects everything. The World Wide Web is basically anything through your web browser. So an example would be www.facebook.com. Whether you're looking at that on Firefox, Chrome, Safari, whatever, that is the World Wide Web. Facebook app on your phone is the internet. So the Facebook app on your phone is not using the World Wide Web, it's using the internet.
So I think of all the examples you could have provided of the World Wide Web, you coming up with Facebook just gave me a heart attack.
I knew you'd like that. So yeah, ubiquitous computing, and that really changed when we had Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi kind of changed the way that we work, with the way we lived. Smartphones as well, you could be constantly connected. Nothing to do with the World Wide Web. That was basically the infrastructure sort of evolved from this dial-up modem that was at your house to faster and faster modems. And even nowadays, a lot of people have a modem. They don't know that it's called a modem. They call it a router. It's sort of all in one device. But that actually connects to your internet service provider. And yes, it's a more sophisticated and faster way to do it, but it's still a modem. You can't get the internet without that device.
So is the majority of the internet today still run on these cables? Because I remember hearing a podcast recently where, leading up to the war in Ukraine, a 16-kilometer stretch of cable, internet cable, was cut off of the Scandinavian Ocean somewhere. And that was just part of the cyber warfare going on. So how much of the internet are we still using underground cables? How much of the internet is actually through satellites?
I don't have those statistics, but I'd guess that maybe 99% of the internet is underground sea cables, 1% or maybe up to 5% is using satellite. Yeah.
Okay.
It's big money. So, for example, between the US, I think the US has maybe got 8 or 9 huge cables coming in and out of it. There's actually a map. It's absolutely fantastic. I can't remember the name of it. I will link it in the show notes. It's interactive. So you can actually look at sort of like a world map, and you can see all the lines coming in and out of your country and what city they go into and where they come out of. And you can also see the redundancy. So, for example, there are some that go via Hawaii and some go via different countries and whatnot. And yeah, it's really big money. I mean, you've got these multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar companies, like their whole industry is laying these underground sea cables. And there's actually YouTube videos you can watch of these submarines, and they drop the cable, down into the water, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean or whatever. Yeah, it's really big money. there's a joke of a certain country that I used to live in Southeast Asia, that whenever the internet was terrible and kept on disconnecting or whatever, they always blamed it on the Chinese sharks. The Chinese sharks were eating the cables of the country, which is a joke. Until I actually read it in one of the official sort of government posts. They actually blamed it. They said, yeah, it's the Chinese sharks are at the internet again. I'm like, I don't know. Is this April Fool's? What's going on? But the Russian mafia has actually been accused of tampering with a lot of these cables underground and above land as well. Either sabotaging them, either cutting them, or tapping them, trying to tap in and hack them and that sort of stuff. And when you think about it, like in the middle of, if you've got a submarine and you're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, obviously it's a big operation, and you cut a cable, it might take a week or something for a ship to come out. And that's why there's all this redundancy. So the internet, not only are the underground sea cables and land cables or whatever, but the routers and all the cables on land or whatever, it's decentralized. So no one owns it. It is actually a fairly good example of a decentralized system, so that if one person or one actor or even one government decides to censor information or freeze or stop it, the traffic and the internet traffic just routes around it. It's like, okay, that link to that particular thing, that's slow or that's dead. We're just going to route around it. And that's true decentralization. And that's really the beauty of the design of the internet, is no one owns it. No one controls it. It is decentralized, and it basically is sort of self-healing, I guess is the best word.
Cool. And that's an example. Whenever I'm talking about Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin, I like to use, when the internet came out, no one could actually buy shares in the internet itself. You couldn't stake, in the internet itself. You had to buy shares in companies that use the internet. Bitcoin's very different. Bitcoin, you're buying into this new asset class. And that's something that we'll take a break now. And we'll talk about Web 3.0 and Bitcoin in the next series here. And just one more question, Warren, since we're on the topic, what really are chemtrails?
You can look that up for yourself.
I'm kidding, guys. We might use that as clickbait. Who knows what kind of listeners we'll get then.
All right.
I think I've offended enough people on today's show, Gords. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, let's offend people in the next episode.
Thank you for tuning in, everyone, and we'll catch you with the next episode when we actually do talk about Web 3.0. And remember, everyone, you can actually pose any question you want. Just go to bitcoinbasics.help. We are on all the different platforms when it comes to listening to the show, and we really do appreciate listener-driven questions, because it means we're answering the questions that you guys want to hear. So please go to bitcoinbasics.help and subscribe, get in touch. Love to hear from you.
Thanks for watching or listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share so we can spread this educational content to others like yourself. Visit bitcoinbasics.help.
Disclaimer. Any content provided by CoinCompass is for educational and informational purposes only and is not investment, legal, tax, or any other professional advice. A qualified professional should be consulted before making any financial decisions. CoinCompass will at times recommend certain products, services, and technologies, but these are opinions based upon our own or podcast guests' experience and not endorsements. We take no liability for out-of-date or inaccurate information, software bugs, manufacturing errors, technology misuse, or issues involving third parties. Visit coincompass.com for more information, and please contact us.